Hey guys, Matt from Mr. Enforcer. Dry sump pumps. What do? Do you need them? So I've got a 13B engine here. We've just finished up for Alex down in Victoria. I believe he's putting this one into a circuit car to do some time attack stuff. And he's opted for a dry sump oiling system. So thought now's a good time to maybe run through and show you guys what is a dry sump pump, how do they work, why do you need one? So first of all, where the big difference is obviously the pump is external. This being your oil pump, dry sump, because the sump will not have oil in it. This is the sump that we make for them. Now this is obviously a 13B. We have a galley here which then has your pockets for your oil scavenge to pick out, to suck out of. We have a galley here for your front stationary gear oil drain to run into. This one here will do your center rotors, so where your two rotors drain out of the center plate, they'll go into this, and then your rear stationary will come into here. Your scavenge sections out of the pump will then draw the oil from these -10 holes here. So as you can see, the dry sump is a lot different to your conventional wet sump. See here, like on this is our standard. We use a 3/4 inch billet alloy plate, 6061 aluminium, and we machine it out to suit. Now being a dry sump pump, so you would have a dry sump oiling system, you would have your oil in here. Now this is a 4-stage oil pump. We've got 3 scavenge, 1 pressure section. So these 3 scavenge sections here will be going to the pump. The pump then has 2 returns which will go back to your oil tank, meaning that the dry sump means exactly that. The sump is dry, it's not full of oil. At no time would there be a sump full of oil. So as you can see, with a dry sump oiling system, you run an external pump. This here being your oil pump. This one in particular is a 4-stage, and the pump that we prefer to use is the Daily Engineering pump. They offer fantastic service, and they will custom build a pump to suit your needs. Now being a rotary engine and having a large requirement of oil volume, where the Daily Engineering pumps differ from other brands on the market is the width of your pressure sections and your scavenge sections. These guys don't have a standard 1.1 inch pressure section. We've gone for a 1.7 inch, meaning more volume, and that is the key to reliability really. It's not so much your oil pressure, it's your oil volume. You can have 250 psi, but if it's on very little volume, you're still going to tear this thing apart. So what we've got here is Alex's engine. Here is our dry sump, so to speak. Now what we do with our dry sump pans is we'll have a section in the front here where your front stationary gear drains, then where your 2 rotors drain through your center plate, and then a rear section for the rear stationary gear. These will then obviously channel down through to your 3 scavenge sections, which will suck the oil out of the pan, through these scavenge sections, out of these two fittings here, which will then take it back to a tank. So the big advantage of having an oil tank is, in particular this application being a circuit car, is we're not going to have the oil sloshing around. As he's cornering, high G's, you go through a right-hand corner, jump hard on the brakes, all of a sudden all the oil is up here. It's running away from the pickup. So a dry sump eliminates that problem of cavitation with the oil, because the oil is in a tank which is then fed through one line. Now I've got a -20 line coming into here, a -16 out, which will then obviously go up through the filter and send the oil through the engine. Now the big difference is, we've now got plenty of volume from the oil pump, but we've also eliminated the oil starvation issue. With the wet sump and the oil sloshing around in there, we now have that -20 line. We're no longer starving the engine of oil at any point in time. As long as this pump's turning, we've got plenty of oil supply. Now on a 13B circuit car, you can see why this might be required, or an advantage. On a street car, forget about it. Even a 20B street car, the standard oil pump is plenty. However, once we start going to like something like our 4-rotor package, they come standard with a dry sump pump. Reason being is that original oil pump that you had in from Mazda was only ever designed to do 2 rotors. Even on the 20B, it is marginal once you start getting higher up in the RPM. On a street car, it'll be fine, and it's not really about the power that you're going to make, it's more about the RPM you're going to turn the engine to. The original Mazda oil pump wasn't designed to spin at 10,000 RPM and supply enough oil volume to feed 3, definitely not 4 rotors. So a race engine in a 3-rotor, dry sump. Our 4-rotor street engines, dry sumped. So now that the dry sump pump, or the dry sump oil pump, has been installed, what we need to do is eliminate the factory wet sump pump. So you take out the oil pump, take out the chain, you no longer require the pickup. This one being a conventionally oiled engine, we'll still retain the relief valve. This is a secondary relief valve, as the dry sump pump has its own relief, or it has its own pressure. Now, you can adjust this here and even change the spring for a higher oil pressure, which then self-bleeds and maintains a constant pressure. So where you might be opting for 100 psi, 110 psi of oil pressure, you can change the spring in the pump and it'll always maintain that. This is realistically just a secondary relief. We could even block that off. We could take the relief valve out, put a plug in there, and your oil pressure would be determined by what's in the pump. So with the oil pump removed, the pickup removed, the only thing you really need to do in the front timing cover is to plug your original oil outlet up. Now, if you didn't, you're basically going to get oil spilling out of there. The rest of this stays hollow. There's no longer any oil being pulled up into here. The pump's all dry, the front cover's going to be dry. Driving the pump is pretty straightforward. What we've got is an adapter which bolts onto the front hub of the engine, and we can determine the speed that the pump runs at via these 2 pulleys. Here we've got 18 tooth and a 40 tooth on the pump, and what we want to do is we only want to run the pump at half engine speed. The majority of the pumps out there won't want to run over 4,800 RPM, 5,000 RPM maximum. What they'll then start to do is cavitate the oil in the pump, so you want to keep the pump speed at half the engine speed. One thing you don't want to do when running a dry sump oiling system is you do not want to crank up the tension on this belt. Ideally, the belt should be able to rotate it at 90 degrees. Running this too tight just puts unnecessary wear on the front bearing. This Billet Boss timing cover has a bearing support in it, but if it was a standard Mazda timing cover, you're basically trying to crank the crank over into there, and it's just going to wear out the stationary gear. There's no advantage to it. The belt doesn't need to be super tight. The other thing advantage you have with the dry sump is this belt can be pulled off. So prior to startup, this pump can be spun. Prime the entire engine with oil before firing it up. The advantage of that, if you've got a mechanical fuel pump running off the back of this and the car's on alcohol, it eliminates that. By priming it up, you've not only primed the oil, you've primed the fuel, so it eliminates that huge alcohol backfire that you get when you try and start them with basically cold alcohol. So on our kit we have a bracket which bolts to the front plate that the oil pump mounts off. We also run a little dampener here. Now the reason we do run this dampener is once this pump starts cranking pressure, not sure if you'll see it, but you might just be able to see there. Once it starts cranking pressure, it wants to pull the nose of the pump around. Obviously, if these pulleys don't remain true, this belt's going to want to walk itself off as that comes over with torque. So we run a dampener on there, which basically just secures the pump, it keeps it steady, and it's an oil-filled nylon, so it's not going to wear the pump. It takes out some of the harmonics as well. So there's a bit of an insight onto how a dry sump system, oiling system works on a rotary engine. If you've got any questions, give us a call, email us, or hit us up on the Facebook page, and we'll be happy to help you out. If you're looking for a pump, mounting kit, any of that sort of stuff, it's in stock.